Before 1981, South Central Los Angeles had union jobs, churches, and families building something real. 8 major factories employed 12,000 workers whose paychecks held an entire community together. Then, plant by plant, those jobs vanished. And into that vacuum came a $2.50 hit of crack cocaine. Within 4 years, Los Angeles lost control of whole neighborhoods. But crack did not cause the collapse. It accelerated one already underway. This is the story of a chain reaction and why it moved faster than anyone thought possible. In South Central Los Angeles, the end of the 1970s meant the end of steady work. 8 factories, Goodyear, Firestone, General Motors, Ford, and American Motors among them, shut their gates one by one. 12,000 jobs disappeared from the neighborhood. These were not just paychecks. They were the glue that held families, churches, and local businesses together. Union wages paid for Sunday dinners, school clothes, and the mortgage on a modest house. A former Goodyear worker put it plainly, when the line stopped, Sunday dinner stopped. The numbers tell the story. Between 1970 and 1985, Los Angeles County lost nearly a third of its manufacturing jobs. In South Central, the loss was even sharper. The 90910 census tracts lost more than 9% of all employed residents, double the county average. Unemployment in these blocks jumped from 6% to 13%. The share of families living below the poverty line rose from 18% to 29%. School lunch lines grew longer as more children qualified for free or reduced meals. By the mid-1980s, a 15% jump in eligibility signaled just how quickly working-class security had vanished. The reasons were bigger than any one company. Automation and offshoring hollowed out the old industrial base. New state regulations raised costs for plants that once ran around the clock. Land once zoned for heavy industry was rezoned for housing and retail. When factories closed, city and county leaders promised job training and redevelopment. But retraining programs reached only a fraction of those displaced. Most found themselves pushed into low-wage service work or out of the workforce entirely. Union halls that once buzzed with shift changes grew silent. Community centers and after-school programs lost funding as the tax base shrank. Even the churches felt the strain, struggling to fill food pantries and keep youth programs alive. The collapse of manufacturing did not just erase jobs. It stripped away the routines and networks that helped people weather hard times. One worker remembered, "We used to look out for each other. When the jobs left, so did the neighborhood." By 1981, South Central was a neighborhood living on the edge. The loss of those 12,000 union jobs left a vacuum, one that no city program or charity could fill. Into that empty space, something else was about to arrive. Long before crack, South Central's streets were already mapped by alliances. The Crips and the Bloods did not materialize out of thin air. They grew from a need for protection and belonging as the old order unraveled. In 1971, Raymond Washington and Stanley Tukey Williams, both teenagers, organized a federation of neighborhood cliques into what became the Crips. Their idea was simple: strength in numbers. The Crips claimed blocks, not just for profit, but to defend against rivals and the police. Blue bandanas and graffiti marked their territory. Each set ran its own crew, answering to a local captain, but all pledged loyalty to the larger name. The Bloods formed in response. As the Crips spread, smaller gangs, including the Pirates, Bounty Hunters, and the Piru, set in Compton, banded together under the color red. Early leaders like Tyrone Big Man Jackson and Jackie J.C. Harris organized the first counterattacks. The Bloods became a line in the sand, defending their blocks from Crip expansion. These were not faceless armies. They were neighborhood kids, brothers, cousins, classmates. Their fights were personal, their boundaries drawn along real streets: Manchester, Crenshaw, and Florence. Gang life in the 1970s meant more than violence. It was a social structure. The Crips and Bloods sponsored block parties, basketball tournaments, and sometimes stepped in to settle disputes when police would not show. Parents and pastors saw the gangs as a threat, but also as a kind of rough community order. LAPD maps from the late 1970s recorded more than 50 sets, each with its own turf and its own code. The gangs were decentralized, with no single boss. Power shifted from set to set, and leadership changed fast. Disputes were handled by street councils, informal gatherings, where older members brokered peace or called truces. Gangs existed because the rest of the system was failing. As jobs vanished and city support faded, these alliances filled the vacuum. They offered identity, protection, and a way to survive. But until the early 1980s, the Crips and Bloods were not organized crime syndicates. They were protective brotherhoods, shaped by the geography and hardship of South Central. Crack would change all that, but it did not create the gangs. It gave them something new: an economy. The networks were already in place, waiting for the next disruption to arrive. In 1981, crack cocaine appeared on the streets of South Central Los Angeles. The Drug Enforcement Administration flagged the new drug in a May bulletin, noting its arrival in a warehouse near downtown. The substance was different from anything seen before. It was cheap, potent, and ready for mass distribution. A single rock, about the size of a pencil eraser, sold for $2.50. For the price of a bus fare, anyone could buy a high that hit in seconds and faded just as quickly, leaving users desperate for more. A longtime resident put it this way: it was like someone flipped a switch. One day, you saw people hanging out, talking, playing cards. The next, you saw them chasing that rock. Dealers found a new kind of customer, not just the wealthy or the well-connected, but working people, teenagers, even parents. The economics of crack changed the rules. Powder cocaine, once reserved for the rich, cost $100 a gram. Crack delivered a rush for a fraction of that price. The drug was easy to make, easy to hide, and easy to sell in tiny doses. It fit the cash-strapped reality of a neighborhood where paychecks had vanished. The timing wasn't an accident. Colombian cartels, facing a glut of powder cocaine, needed a way to unload product as prices collapsed. Crack was their answer. Dealers could stretch a kilo into thousands of individual rocks. The profit margins exploded. Street corners turned into open-air markets almost overnight. The old rules of the game, territory, loyalty, reputation, were now tied to who controlled the flow of crack. For local gangs, this was an opportunity. The infrastructure was already in place. All it took was a new product to turn protection crews into distributors. The system wasn't ready. City leaders, police, and even community elders were caught off guard by the speed and scale of the change. The arrival of crack didn't start the fire in South Central. It poured gasoline on it. Ricky Donnell Ross, known on the streets as Freeway Ricky, was born in South Central in 1960. By his early 20s, he had built a distribution network that outpaced anything Los Angeles had ever seen. Ross was not a chemist or a cartel boss. He was a connector, someone who understood both the desperation in his neighborhood and the power of existing gang alliances. He took the Crips and Bloods' territorial maps and turned them into business routes. Each set became a storefront, each block a potential market. The numbers are staggering. Ross himself claimed, in a 1985 sheriff's interview, that his operation was moving up to $3 million worth of cocaine a day. Federal prosecutors later estimated that between 1982 and 1989, his network moved more than 4 metric tons of cocaine, converted and sold as crack, rock by rock, on street corners from Watts to Compton. This was not just a rumor passed around in jailhouse stories. Department of Justice case files, court transcripts, and interviews with task force agents all confirm the scale. At the height of his business, Ross was grossing more in a week than the old Goodyear plant made in a month. Ross did not care which color you wore. He sold to Crip and Blood crews alike, using their rivalries to keep prices high and territories locked down. One former task force agent described it this way: he was the supplier. If you had a set, he would give you a cut of the product and you would move it. It did not matter if you were blue or red. The gangs, once focused on protection and reputation, now had a new mission: profit. Crack became the currency, and Ross became the middleman who kept the supply flowing. His network ran on trust, fear, and the promise of fast money in a neighborhood where every other door was closing. For young men in South Central, the choice was stark. A legitimate job, if you could find one, might pay $200 a week. A corner spot in the crack trade could bring in 10 times that. The old order, union jobs, church socials, block parties, was gone. In its place stood a new economy, built on addiction and enforced by violence. Freeway Ricky Ross did not invent the collapse. He just figured out how to turn it into cash. By 1984, the city's emergency rooms were on the front lines of a disaster no one had planned for. Hospital records show cocaine-related cases in Los Angeles County jumping from 23,500 in 1985 to 94,000 by 1987. That's a 4-fold increase in just 2 years. The waiting rooms at Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital and County USC filled with people suffering seizures, chest pains, and psychosis. Nurses worked double shifts. Beds ran out. Ambulances lined up outside, unable to unload. The old system, already stretched by years of poverty and job loss, buckled under the weight of this new crisis. On a typical night, paramedics wheeled in teenagers shaking from overdoses and mothers clutching infants born too early. One mother standing in the hallway said, "I never thought I'd see my son come in like this. He was a good kid. Now he's fighting for his life." Her words echoed the shock running through the neighborhood. Crack didn't just create addicts. It tore families apart in real time. The chaos spilled out onto the streets. South Central's corners, once home to block parties and Sunday barbecues, turned into open-air drug markets. Fights broke out over sales turf. Gunshots replaced the sound of kids playing. Police scanners crackled with calls, shots fired, overdose, robbery. The city's response was to send more patrol cars, but the flow of bodies into the emergency room never slowed. Doctors and social workers sounded the alarm. They testified before City Council that the system was overwhelmed. "We are running out of Narcan. We are running out of hope." By the summer of 1985, even the hospitals, the last safety net, were stretched to the breaking point. The old rules no longer applied. The speed of the collapse stunned everyone. The city was losing control, not just of its streets, but of its ability to save lives. A corner boy in South Central could pull in $2,000 a month selling crack. That was more than a starting wage on the old Goodyear line, and it came fast. Cash in hand, no taxes, no questions. The math was simple. A dealer paid a supplier less than $2 for a rock, sold it for $2.50, and turned over dozens, sometimes hundreds, every night. The money moved up the chain, from the runner on the sidewalk to the set leader collecting his cut. One ex-dealer said that you could make a week's pay in a single night, but you needed muscle to hold the corner. The profits changed everything. Gangs that once fought with fists and chains now invested in firepower. In 1979, 71% of gang murders involved guns. By 1994, that number had climbed to 94%. The arms race was fueled by the need to defend turf and protect cash flow. Every block became a business, every dispute a battle over market share. Crews pooled money to buy pistols, shotguns, even automatic rifles. Tools not just for intimidation, but for survival. Territory became more than pride. It was inventory, revenue, risk. The old codes faded as the lure of fast money made violence a cost of doing business. The crack economy did not just reward aggression, it required it. The system, already stripped of jobs and hope, now ran on a logic where profit and firepower went hand in hand. Operation Hammer landed like a shockwave in South Central. In April 1988, the LAPD sent more than 1,000 officers into the neighborhood for a single weekend sweep. The official tally was 1,453 arrests. Fewer than 60 were felonies. Most were for minor offenses, such as traffic tickets, curfew violations, and loitering. The streets filled with police cruisers, helicopters circled overhead, and entire blocks were locked down. For many residents, it felt like an invasion, not protection. The most infamous raid came at 39th and Dalton. 88 officers stormed 2 apartment buildings before dawn. They tore through walls, flipped mattresses, and smashed furniture. When the dust settled, the total haul was less than 6 ounces of marijuana and barely an ounce of cocaine. Doors hung off their hinges. Family photos and baby clothes littered the hallways. A tenant later described it. They treated us like animals. They did not find what they were looking for, so they destroyed everything. The city paid $3.8 million to the residents of those buildings after a court found the raid unconstitutional. But the damage ran deeper. Operation Hammer was supposed to reclaim the streets. Instead, it showed just how far the city would go and how little it got in return. The crackdown did not stop the crack trade. It left a neighborhood more battered, more distrustful, and more convinced that help was not coming. In 1986, Congress passed the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. The law set a new standard. 5 grams of crack carried the same mandatory federal sentence as 500 grams of powder cocaine. That is a 100-to-1 ratio. A single handful of crack meant years behind bars. In South Central, this law landed hardest on young black men, the same group already hit by layoffs and police sweeps. Federal prison admissions for drug offenses soared from 150,000 in 1980 to 250,000 by 1990. Most of those new inmates came from neighborhoods like Watts, Compton, and the East Side. The crackdown did not stop at sentencing. In 1985, The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department rolled out a computerized gang database. By 1990, 47% of black men aged 21 to 24 in the county were listed as gang members. Being in the database meant more stops, more searches, fewer job offers. A community organizer said that once you are in that system, you are in it for life. They do not care if you ever sold drugs or not. The numbers became labels. The labels became sentences. The sentences became permanent barriers. Crack was never just a drug problem. It was a policy problem, a paperwork problem, a problem of who got written into the system and who got written off. The crisis became institutional, locked into law and code. The city's response, meant to restore order, ended up deepening the collapse. Broken systems collapse fast when the right spark hits. Crack did not build the gangs or empty the factories. It gave a fractured city a new, violent economy overnight. The scars still shape South Los Angeles, where poverty and over-policing remain daily realities. The warning stands. Ignore the foundations, and the next crisis will arrive even quicker. What would it take to see the fire coming next time?